What's up YouTube, Dale here from Zephyr, and today I am bringing you an update to my favourite Blue Eyes variant, and today is the update for Blue Eyes Invoked. Now this is obviously going to involve Dragon Master Magia, as I do feel that it's one of the versions that can really utilise Magia, as you're able to set up protection before you try to work into it. That being said, with every type of version of Magia or access to Magia right now, you do need to play a couple of additional bricks in order to get to it, until we at least get the new Primite Fusion spell, because then that will open up the door to be able to make Magia in a different way. I'm also going to show you my demo side deck as well, so you have as much information as possible if you're looking to put this deck together and what you're going to be subbing in, subbing out, and everything else in between. So with all of that out of the way, please smash that like button, hit that notification bell, and subscribe to miss out on any more upcoming content. So diving headfirst into the Blue Eyes lineup, very standard on this one. 2 Blue Eyes White Dragon and the single Jet Dragon. This is just my personal preference. The fact of the matter is, because you're already adding in additional bricks, you could take out Blue Eyes Jet Dragon if you wish to, and then that would then open up the door for you to be able to go, okay cool, well I've got the deck down to exactly 40, but I do feel that Jet Dragon does put in some work later on in the game, and it's one of the ones that if your opponent doesn't respect, as I've said many a times, that will really catch them off guard, and it can be one of those win cons for you. It is completely down to personal preference. You can sub it out if you need to. What isn't down to preference, and probably what isn't really like debatable, is Free Maiden and Free Sages. The last of my Blue Eyes-esque monsters that I play is of course the one Master with Eyes of Blue. Now on the flip side, if you wanted to, you can consider the Neo Kaiser. If you do want to play the Neo Kaiser, the one reason I don't really like it is I really wish the Neo Kaiser, there it is, just trying to find my copy of it. I really do wish the Neo Kaiser was a level 1 that it could be searched. It is great to be able to send that Blue Eyes Chaos Max from deck to the graveyard, and that will set you up even more consistency in order to make your Magia plays. Unless you're going to be playing the Bestials in the particular deck, and even then, what you're doing is you're increasing your access to your Neo Kaiser Seahorse, because you'd go Bestial Magnamut during your opponent's turn, and then end phase search out your Neo Kaiser. You still don't really want your Neo Kaiser to be your normal summon. Yes, of course, it's still great to be able to send a Maiden, or of course send the Blue Eyes Chaos Max, setting up your Magia a little bit more consistently. But the fact that it isn't directly searchable, you can't even search it off of the back of wishes, really does make it a bit more of a sticking issue than it does of anything else. Whereas the benefit of having someone like Master does help you out in the grind game. It also gives you a way of being able to graveyard trigger your Maiden, and it allows you to push your field that little step further forward in order to kind of add more to it when you're comboing it off with the Invoked and of course access to Magia. Then for the Blue Eyes spell lineup, of course Triple Wishes. 1 Mausoleum, which technically isn't a Blue Eyes spell, which is really annoying because it technically doesn't list Blue Eyes White Dragon, which means you can't search it out or set it. But it's still an incredibly integral card for the entire strategy. Then of course 1 Raw, and our best way of getting into Magia right now is the Ultimate Fusion. Keeping in mind that with Ultimate Fusion you have to use your Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, which is why it gets a little bit awkward in order to make your Magia, and then a Chaos Monster, and that's when you're going to obviously be backing this up with your access to your Chaos cards, which I'll talk through in a second. And then for the track cards, we've got the 1 True Light and the 1 Majesty. Now, one thing that's really important to remember with the Majesty is that its second effect will allow you to ritual summon any monster from your hand, but you have to be tributing Blue Eyes White Dragons from the hand or field. So the benefit of something like that is even the Chaos Monster that we choose to play in this build is actually summonable, which is really kind of cool. It does give you that additional value out of the back of it. The one thing that I do also like about playing this card, and I'm just going to skip ahead to it now anyway, being the Blackluster Soldier Legendary Swordsman, is the fact that it's Earth means that it can't get Bestialed out of the graveyard. Whereas if you go for something like Blue Eyes Chaos Max, and if you don't have the proper protection set up, your opponent could Bestial it out of the graveyard, and then your Ultimate Fusion will just fizzle. The fact that it's obviously gives you the ability, so just so you know what the effects of this one is, during your draw phase, before you draw, you can reveal this card in the hand. Given up your normal draw this turn if you do add a ritual spell from the deck to the hand, which you're not going to be doing. However, your opponent could not activate cards or effects during the battle phase. When this attacking card that was ritual summoned using a normal monster destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you get to shuffle all cards your opponent controls into the deck. So it's a nice little field clear. Obviously, it's very niche with those scenarios, but you're only ever going to ritual summon it with Blue Eyes White Dragon, so that effect is always going to be live. And it is one of the ones that you very rarely want to ritual summon it, but in a grind game, if you were to, for example, top deck this in the grind game, and you've got Majesty in the grave, and your opponent forgets about it, you can just go, okay, cool, banish Majesty, summon down the BLS, and then build your field from there. Then obviously the card that we're going to use to get to our Chaos Monster is the Gateway. Now the reason that Gateway is so good in this is that our bridge in the extra deck is of course going to be the Ancient Fairy Dragon. Now the reason you get multiple usages out of the back of this is not only can it go from your Mausoleum to your Gateway to get you your Magia plays, but it can also go from your Magical Meltdown for your Invoked engine into the Gateway, or of course the Magical Meltdown into Mausoleum should you need it. And as a preview for the side deck, it also works you into Secret Village of the Spellcasters, which you can play this in any version of Blue Eyes if you want to, because when you're able to use True Light to bring back Blue Eyes and then in turn bring back Maiden, it makes it very awkward for your opponent to try and break, because they then have to attack the Maiden to get rid of your Spellcaster, and then in turn you can trigger Maiden's effect to bring back your Sage from the graveyard, which means they need to set up 2 attacks, and then so 2 attacks, technically skip over their battle phase, and then have to use all their spells in main phase 2. Now the reason I prefer to have this in the side is you're never guaranteed to go first with this deck, and I feel that Secret Village is definitely going to be 100% brick, because if you're going second and you like draw Secret Village, there's at no point where you're ever going to be in a benefit for it. I also feel that with a lot of Blue Eyes running around, this is one of them cards that you're probably not going to be putting in your main deck to face against Blue Eyes, because they'll just go, cool, normal summon down Sage. There might be a very, very niche scenario where you're like, okay, cool, if I set up the Secret Village and they normal summon their Sage, if they attempt to use Sage's effect, I'm just going to destroy it. But if they were to choose not to use Sage's effect and they're trying to play around the Secret Village and then go, cool, normal summon Sage, no effect, the chances are you then need to have a Majesty in order to destroy said Sage, otherwise they're just going to activate a spell card, which could be something as powerful as like a Regeki, Harpy's Feather Duster, you name it. So that's why that's in the side deck, not in the main deck. For the Invoked package, of course, we are going to be playing triple Alistar the Invoker, followed up by 2 Meltdown, and the reason we've got 2 Meltdown is I am playing the 1 Terraforming. Now, the reason that I go with Terraforming rather than 3 Meltdown is it's all going to do the exact same thing. So for anyone that says, oh, don't play Terraforming, play 3 Magical Meltdown, you're still going to run into play around Draw Unlock Bird. You're still going to do that regardless, so you might as well just play Terraforming. The reason I like to play Terraforming, again, when you take into the account the Secret Village, is that if I was to see Terraforming, this can be my Mausoleum if my Link 1 Blue Eye Spirit gets stopped, or of course it can be my Magical Meltdown, and then when the side deck gets involved, it can also be Secret Village. So this can be a 1 of 3 cards, whereas if I did have a 3rd copy of Magical Meltdown, yes, as much as I would like to see Magical Meltdown as opposed to everything else, if I did see it, and then I saw multiples of Magical Meltdown, it was just less effective for me. Of course, you can bump this deck up to a 42 and play 3 Magical Meltdown. It really is entirely up to you. I just like that this technically pseudos as a 1 of 2 in the main deck, and then a 1 of 3 when you include the side deck. Then, of course, 2 Invocations. And then the one thing that I am trialing out in this particular build, rather than main deck and Draw Unlock Bird, I'm actually siding it, is I wanted to try out Super Polymerization. Now, I haven't fully committed to this, and you'll see this in the extra deck, that I haven't gone for a fully Super Poly available extra deck, but you would adapt your extra deck selection down to the environment. Now, just as a bit of a preview ahead so you can have a bit of an understanding, is Super Poly with Alistar plus a light on your opponent's field gets you Macabre, which is your ideal one you want to go to. If you want to lean into Super Polymerization a little bit more, of course, you'd start looking at other Alistar options. So if you're going to be facing a lot of winds in your environment, of course, you'd go for the Raijin. If you're going to be facing lots of fire, you can go for Purgatrio. If you're going to be facing loads of earth, you've got the earth one. I can't remember its name off the top of my head. I do apologize. It's just one that you don't really use. And then the one that I feel you're going to be coming up against more times than not, especially post-Alliance Insight, will be Kaliga. Now, what I really like about Kaliga is it is a very powerful stun card. So this one, each player can only activate or attempt to activate 1 monster effect per turn, and each player can only attack with 1 monster during each battle phase. Now, obviously, it does affect both players, but the idea is if you're able to kind of really slow down the game state, so your opponent commits a monster to the board that is a dark monster, you can go Super Polymerization with your Alistar plus their dark monster, get you into Kaliga, and really slow the game state down. If you want to, on the flip side as well, you do have a Geddes, which does use a fusion monster on the field, and that's what I'm saying. If you want to commit to the Super Polymerization line a little bit more, you can add in more targets. I just wanted to have my final target being Garura, Wings of Resonance Life, so that I did have a generic one, because there will be those times at my environment where the odd rogue matchup will come up, and I didn't want to rely on having access to Alistar the Invoker, and if I don't have access to it, I can't Super Poly anything. The irony is, if you are up against a Blue Eyes deck and they put Blue Eyes Chaos Max on the field, you can go Super Poly. It would need you to use Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon if you summon it out, or of course free Blue Eyes monsters, which could be relatively easy, because if you're up against a Blue Eyes Chaos Max deck and they put 2 Blue Eyes on the board, or even 3 Blue Eyes on the board, you go, okay, cool, Super Poly, make my own Magia. Very, very niche scenario, but there's something that may come up which is slightly funny. But I do like Super Poly as being a field breaker, which is why I'm also considering kind of focusing a little bit more on some other targets for the extra deck, but this is just one that I wanted to highlight highlight, say it is playable in the deck, it's still very good in the deck, but it's one of the ones that if you don't feel it, if it doesn't work at your environment because your environment is like 12 different decks and different styles and you can't guarantee that you're always going to have a target for it, of course you can side them out or just not play them. That is the other big benefit, is if in the matchup you're like, okay, I don't face anything, you can take the super polys out. You'll still have a benefit for when you're going first as well, because you can still super poly during the battle phase using your own field. So you could have Alistair plus a light monster and then make a Macabre during the battle phase to push in that final damage that you might need. You can obviously go for a Kaliga to push in the final damage, a Garura, and then of course that's where a Geddes and everything else would come into play. Then for the hand traps, of course, we've got triple Ash Blossom, double Ogre and double Veiler, so obviously benefiting more off of the back of the light targets, because then it means that when I activate Invocation, I can banish these as my light targets rather than having to banish any of my Blue Eyes cards. One thing that a lot of people say to me is, why don't you play Purgatrio, which I won't show you in the extra deck because I don't play Purgatrio, and purely for the fact of the matter is that the Tyrant Dragon will do the job a little bit better of clearing the field, and because you're utilising it with Blue Eyes, you already have enough strong monsters that you don't need to rely on the piercing battle damage of Purgatrio. I'm not saying Purgatrio is a bad card at all, it's actually a really, really good card, but when you're trying to really thin down your extra deck, and this extra deck still focuses on Blue Eyes, like your main goal when you're making Alistair is to set you up with a Macabre so that you're protected from everything else from that point on, so that when you start making your Blue Eyes plays, you are going to be safe. So it's one of them ones that if you wanted to lean into Purgatrio, you could do, but I didn't want to rely on me seeing an Ash Blossom, my opponent seeing an Ash Blossom, as like I said at the start, the base minimum is my opponent may not be on a heavy lineup of fire monsters, unless you're going to an environment where everyone is on Fire Kings, then by all means, main deck of Purgatrio, that's quite easily done. But I felt that it was one of the ones that I didn't want to play the Salamangreat Almirage into the Secure Gardener. I felt that that's two spots you just really didn't need to use in this deck. The idea is you want to go normal summon Alistair, turn it into your Blue Eyes Link one, and then build off the back of that. Keep in mind, if you do go into the Blue Eyes Link one, you need to get it off the field first because you will be Dragonlocked, and Macabre, sadly, is not a dragon. But that is the idea that I don't main deck Purgatrio and don't even have it in a side deck, because it's just one of them environment specific ones that I feel Blue Eyes naturally already have a way to use the field clear of Purgatrio, and then the piercing effect I don't worry about so much, because by the point I've got Tyrant Dragon, I'm pushing through for game with my other monsters on the field anyway, and Tyrant is just there to clear the field, or at the very least recycle a trap card for the next turn. And then the final trap card is triple Infinite Impermanence, because unfortunately you can't play Purge or Pulse, or technically you could, but because you're playing Darks with Alistair and then Lights with all your Blue Eyes and Maidens and Sages, they're both going to clash and you won't be able to get away with playing those. So that's it for the entire main deck. Now to show you the extra deck. So I've already kind of shown you the start of Invoked Macabre, so you're going to be playing two of this. A lot of people say, well, wouldn't you play one Macabre and one Geddes? I actually don't mind making a second Macabre. Like, I make a first Macabre, the idea is I'm going to protect my field, do what I need to do, and then going second, once I've recycled the Alistair, if I haven't had to discard the Alistair, I can normal summon it, get the exact same play going again, and then make a second Macabre. Chances are more times than not the first one's already been using its effect, it's already been cleared off, it's already been destroyed, so then I just have the follow-up for the second one. Personal preference, again, if you want to lead in Super Poly a little bit more, you can substitute this out for a Purgatrio or anything that might be more suitable for the environment. Then, of course, we do have the one Kaliga, already pretty much mentioned this one, and the one Garura. The one big benefit about something about like the invoked version of this one is activating Invocation will then guarantee. So if your opponent goes, if you were to go, sorry, normal summon Alistair, search out Invocation, Alistair into the Link 1, make your plays, it kind of forces your opponent to activate True Light a lot earlier, because as soon as you activate Invocation, once you're legally able to, even if they haven't activated True Light yet, they will then go, okay, cool, they could banish my Blue Eyes. So they would then have to be forced to chain the True Light to bring back the Blue Eyes. And you go, okay, cool, that's fine. Resolve the Invocation, banish my Alistair, banish their Maiden. So their Maiden's not coming back to that field. And that's where it kind of gives you a bit more of a beneficial edge. The last fusion monster, of course, is the Dragon Master Magia. I've mentioned this many a times. It's just a really cool card, looks amazing. I've got one, so I want to use one, but you don't need to. Like, this is really just a additional layer. You could very easily sacrifice the Dragon Master Magia, you would take out the BLS, you would then also take out the Gateway to Chaos. That would then open up the ability for you to put at least one more card in, which could be a Pot of Prosperity, and then it'll also open up the extra deck for like 1 or 2 spaces, because you wouldn't really need to worry or lean into the Ancient Fairy Dragon or the Crystal Wing as much. So for our Synchro monsters, of course, pretty standard on this one. 2 Spirits. I have jumped over 2 fusion monsters, which I will go back to in a minute, because they link back to... Actually, you know what? Rewind that little bit, let's just go straight into them now. So Tyrant Dragon, pretty standard, and then Blue Eyes Ultimate, which you need to make your Dragon Master Magia. There we go. Now onto the synchros. 2 Blue-Eyes Spirit Dragons, and then all the targets that Spirit Dragons will produce. So number 1 being your Ancient Fairy Dragon. Its special summon effect from the hand can sometimes come up, but it's slightly irrelevant because annoyingly Alistair will only trigger on normal or flip summon. It won't trigger on a special summon. So if you really wanted to special summon down an Alistair, you're not really gaining much advantage. If anything, what you'll be doing with the Ancient Fairy Dragon, if you've already started off with your Alistair and your additional normal summon is something like a Sage, you'd only activate the Ancient Fairy Dragon to special summon down another level 1 Light Tuner or just another level 1 Tuner to then work you into a Crystal Wing. So when you're trying to push to make your end field be something like, and by the time you go through Ancient Fairy Dragon, you're already going into the Magia plays. Your end field could be something as easy as an Invoked Macabre, a Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon, and then a Dragon Master Magia, backed up with a True Light and a Majesty, or just a True Light. So you've got a Monster Negate with Crystal Wing, you've got whatever card you have in hand negate off of the back of your Invoked Macabre, and then of course you've got another spell, trap, and a monster off of the back of the Magia. So it just means that you can actually hold back the Alistair negate in hand as much as possible. Then the other targets over the back of Spirit Dragon will be your Lightstorm Dragon to deal with these spells and traps, and then of course your Blue Eyes Ultimate Spirit Dragon. Finish up with your 2 Link monsters being your Spirit with Eyes of Blue. Now obviously the idea behind your Spirit with Eyes of Blue is that you're not going to be leaning into it or leaning into your Link monsters that heavily. Of course you can play your you can play the Heavenly Spheres if you wanted to, you can play SP Little Knight, but because we're opening up the door to the Super Poly and of course the Super Poly options and the Invoked, you kind of have a bit more of a restricted extra deck. But again, if you don't want to play Magia, by all means, sub it out and go from there. So moving on to the extra deck. So as I've already mentioned, we do play the 1 Secret Village of the Spellcasters, and then we do play Triple Tactics Thrust. Now the reason I'm showing the Triple Tactics Thrust is that the targets that you can get off of the back of it. In the main deck, of course, it can get you access to Wishes, and get you access to Majesty, and it can also get you access to Terraforming, which could then in turn lead you into, of course, your Magical Meltdown, Alistair, and so on and so forth. When you start taking into account the extra deck, the side deck, the other targets that your Thrust can work you into will be a Harpy's Feather Duster, a Evenly Matched, and the reason that I cut Evenly Matched down to 1 is because I also wanted to play the Destructive Daruma Cannon. You would adapt this element of your extra deck to what you feel you are going to be facing. If you feel that it is going to be Malice Central, then of course you can go into the Fantastical Dragon Phantasme. You can also look at Chaos Hunter. It is entirely up to you. Then the other card that I do like to play right now is Triple Salesman. Now I like to play this when I'm playing a deck that I know will run into a common hand trap. Now what I mean by that is this deck will run into Draw and Lockbird. If your opponent sees Draw and Lockbird and they activate Draw and Lockbird against you, it does make it incredibly awkward because you do a lot of searching. Magical Meltdown to Alistair opens up the door for a draw, and then your whole Alistair engine is shut off. Normal summon Alistair, search out Invocation, again, that then shuts you off. Yes, of course, you can still link your Alistair into the Blue Eyes Link 1, but then you won't be able to search out your Mausoleum, so you need to have already hard opened it. Activate Wishes, search out your 2 cards, then you get hit with a draw. It can get very, very painful. So when you're able to play Salesman, and this is one that could be in the main deck, but I feel it's better suited for the side deck, you put your Salesman if you're going first, so let's talk about game 3. You're going first, you're like, right, okay, I know that if I want to get the max capable outfield of my entire hand, I'm going to need to make sure I either avoid draw or don't get hit by draw. So don't even worry about trying to take the risk. Just literally and very simply go draw phase, main phase, activate Salesman, call Draw and Lockbird, and then straight away you feel free to go off. You can play through an Imperm, you can play through a Veiler, you can play through an Ash. Of course, if your opponent has 4 other hand traps, that's just the way the game goes, and it might be very awkward to try and play through, but you just need to deal with that Draw and Lockbird. Speaking of which, Draw and Lockbird. One of them ones that, again, if you're going to be going second, you won't obviously put in Salesman, you'll put in Draw and Lockbird, and then you'd put Draw and Lockbird in a specific matchup where that is going to hurt your opponent a heck of a lot more. The other specific hand trap for the format, of course, will be the Artifact Lancier. So being able to drop the Artifact Lancier on your Malice opponent will cause them a lot of issues. It does look like Malice players will start to try and counter-side for Artifact Lancier. And what I mean by that is they're going to counter-side by putting in stuff like Triple Tactics Thrust, so that if you hit them with a Lancier, they're going to attempt to set a card that is going to skip your entire turn. The only card that will really skip your entire turn would be Different Dimension Ground, and even then, you are still able to present a decent enough field with Blue Eyes White Dragon monsters if you open up the right cards in order to still push for a decent amount of damage, and if you're lucky enough to have a second Artifact Lancer, happy days. So that's it for the main deck, side deck, and the extra deck to give you as much information as I can possibly do. If you do have any questions at all, by all means, please put in the comments down below. I will be more than happy to answer them as always. For now, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share. Till next time, as absolutely always, stay safe. And of course, once I find the last card, happy dueling.